right, let's try this again. Episode 49. We're back. Art Fisher diving into anime. We're going to dive into a relatively recent anime, Attack on Titan. Nolan and I have seen it in full. Nolan just did a rewatch of it. And so we are here to work our way through obvious spoilers. We're going to be discussing the show in full. Yeah, let's not waste your time. Let's get down to it.
Where do you want me to begin? The origins?
Yeah, I mean, we could talk why watch this show, I guess. Just very loosely, if you want. Or before the origins.
Well, I think the origins are, well, yeah, why? I mean, it's based on a manga that came out years before the show ever did, which I think is pretty typical of a lot of this anime content. Manga started in 2010 and ended by 2021, whereas the show ran from 2013 to last year, 2 years ago, 2023. So really long release schedule.
For how short it is. Like, it's not like it's like 150 episodes.
Yes, and I believe there's also multiple adaptations. I think there's some bad live action adaptations of like the first few volumes of the manga. There's definitely multiple other iterations of different arcs within the show, which, as far as I know, is pretty standard for manga and anime adaptations in general. But for the sake of simplicity, we're really only going to be talking about the anime, with maybe some touches at the very end of whenever we discuss the story and the plot. We'll talk about the differences between the manga and the anime. I think because the anime may have two different endings, one of which is actually true to the source material, one of which is a change because the creator on a whim was like, what if I made it poorly?
Yeah, I was gonna start off by saying Nolan and I both do like this show, and we never want to, just do an episode that's just a shit fest where we're just taking huge shots, taking a dump on something. So, feel free to comment. But at the same time, we are critiquing things, but just to be clear, we are critiquing things that we enjoy. That doesn't mean that we hate it. It just means that, these are things that we feel could have been done better. But by and large, we like the show to varying degrees, I would say. I think I probably like the show more than you do, especially upon your rewatch, but I guess we'll see as we get through it.
Yeah, so before we launch into sort of the plot and getting into the meat of sort of the content of the show, we can talk about why watch it or why it became so popular, because I'm pretty sure this is the most watched anime of all time. I don't actually have any evidence to support that. It's just a feeling I have, which, if I understand correctly, that's all that matters.
Your feelings, right?
Somebody's, yeah, maybe not mine, somebody's. But yeah, as for why it became popular, if it started in 2013, this would have been sort of the advent or the beginning period of the success of streaming services. And this would have maybe, I don't know what this would have come out on first. I remember watching it on Hulu. No, I remember watching it on Netflix.
It was on Netflix, yeah.
When they did actually release it in English. And part of the release schedule is that once they did the English release, not only the dubbed English release, but the subtitled English release, those came out like a year or so after the actual version. So in terms of the release schedule being really long, because, for a show that really only had 96 episodes, which are functionally 18 to 20 minutes long. They're very short, as normal anime episodes would be. That's a really long release schedule.
Yes.
90 episodes in a decade is not quick, especially with regards to the way that American shows are made, where, in that same span of time, if we analyzed the amount of, I don't know, let's say Simpsons episodes, it would probably be 500, some hundreds. Obviously, that's a poor analogy because The Simpsons is a mass-produced piece of garbage. Whereas, granted, we're talking about 2013 Simpsons, which no one could possibly defend as being, more artistically vigorous than Attack on Titan, which I think went so over budget that it actually changed animation studios between the third and the fourth season. But the animation style in general is also, quite a bit more involved, detail-oriented, tons of moving set pieces, action scenes. There's a lot of switching between like 3D animation, 2D animation.
Yeah.
And that style of animation is obviously not only more expensive to produce, but it takes a lot longer to make. So I think that's part of the reason the release schedule was so challenged. In addition to the fact that the manga, the way most manga are released, as basically serials, like you just release one issue a week, and then you basically have X number of issues per volume, and then you end up with 30 volumes. It's all just a way of packaging art as a product and then selling it for consumption.
Yeah, I think I think that to be clear, like I think it's clearly a top 10 most popular anime. Depending on the metric you're using, it falls within the top 5. It falls number 1. It falls at number 8. It just depends on what list you're going by. But the animation style, I think, like you said, it certainly revolutionized, but I think it was also one of the chief reasons for its huge popularity and success, because the action sequences really solidified just how like fast moving and violent and also like high energy, but also high quality, where anime has had that. It's not that they were, changing the pacing necessarily, but also, I mean, if you go back 20 years to some of the anime that was coming out, you had like super long, drawn out fight scenes that basically nothing was happening in a lot of it, which, I mean, we'll get into some of the episodes where there are kind of like some pauses with, but
there's whole arcs, like 5-episode arcs. It's just one battle.
Yeah, but my point is it's less of like posturing and people staring at one another like, who will make the first move? It happens sometimes, but in a lot of other anime suffers from that, where it's literally like 5 episodes or sometimes like 50 episodes of just like people staring at one another saying things.
Yeah.
And thankfully this doesn't do that, and also it's short enough of a show that it's like you were talking about packaging, right? It's a shorter package or a smaller package to actually consume, whereas there's some anime that just go on forever, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but like if you want to try to take on watching something like One Piece, like that's great if you want to do that, but that's literally a lifetime basically, or a huge chunk of your life that you're going to be watching that. Not coming at One Piece fans, but more it's it's a huge thing to take on, whereas Attack on Titan is less of a time commitment, I would say, for what you get.
Right. So I pulled up, just for the sake of, I suppose, edification, the list of best-selling mangas of all time, which I assume is closely related to most watched / best-selling anime of all time. And Attack on Titan is the 11th highest selling.
Okay, so highest selling. Gotcha. You said the manga? The manga? Okay.
Yeah. So One Piece is the highest selling.
Right.
And it's actually not even close.
But yeah, for the purposes of this episode, we will be referencing the manga not as much as the show. We'll like really only mention the manga if it's like a critical piece where the show deviates, I
Yeah.
guess.
I also don't know if it's pronounced manga or manga.
I've heard it both ways. There's a lot of people who get all hot and bothered if you say it one way or another, but I'll just be oscillating because I'm an English teacher and don't really care, because that's how words work.
These are Japanese words, though.
Right. Yep. That was part of the bit. Back to it. So, like, why watch this show? I think that's a good question. Why would someone sit down and watch this? I mean, it touches on many similar anime tropes. It's got meta narratives of racial superiority. The world is a cold, dark place. I mean, love and friendship. It's critiquing violence.
It's a shonen anime, so it literally has to fit into a box. It has to follow some guidelines to appeal rigidly to its target demographic.
Yeah, I mean, basically, like, I know we'll come up with some comps at certain points in time, but like Full Metal Alchemist, like, if someone likes Full Metal Alchemist, that's loosely similar audience, I would say, in some ways.
Yeah, just exactly the same.
Right. I mean, another sort of love and friendship, critique of violence, like I said. There is a bit of a development of mystery. There's some political intrigue as well, like different factions, which is fun to sort of like sort through. There's an examination of one's legacy. And then there's also, I mean, you and I have talked about this off air, like, plenty. We watched the last episode of this together, I believe, or one of the final episodes. I think this is when they were saying it was the final episode, and then like they released other ones after it. But
they said that literally every year for 6 years, I want to say.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So
I stopped watching this for years because they kept saying, this is it, this is the final bit, and then it was just, nope, there's 10 more volumes.
Right. So what happens when we release this in next week or 2 months? They're like, actually, there's more to it. But anyway, what I was gonna say is that there's this continual like meta narrative or metaphor as well that references an atomic bomb, basically, which is in a lot of ways, like, I mean, you mentioned what's that show? Not Naruto.
One Piece.
No.
Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, Dragon Ball Z. That one. There's a ton of anime shows where basically the metaphor is an atomic bomb that goes off, which this show is in large part, I would say, in reference to, and like basically asking, like, what happens if this were to happen? Like, what's the response to this? What's the response to having this weapon, and what should be done about this weapon, basically?
Right. I mean, there are just mushroom clouds in the show. Like, actual, just the one Titan has the ability to nuclear bomb an area, which happens multiple times and results in the iconic mushroom cloud imagery, which, yeah, is as tied to metaphorical anime as anything else would be.
Yeah, I just think it would be kind of a disservice to not mention that right off the bat. All right, cool. So do we want to get going with season 1?
Yeah, we can go through kind of season by season. I was going to just like tirade my way through the whole plot, just spoil everything, get it all out there in as concise terms as possible, and then we can kind of work our way through the story and say what we like, if that works for you.
Yeah, this is not meant to what's the word? It's not meant to like really funnel everything down and, like we said, sort of minimize the show. It's more just for the sake of discussing it and discussing the plot points and characters, that it helps to kind of like put everything out in a timeline to then work our way backwards and discuss the characters and what worked well and maybe didn't work well for a Nolan bite-sized rant.
Well, this will hopefully not be a rant and just borderline accurate description of things as they were in the show. So yeah, I guess without further ado, I'll see. This is a complicated show with a lot of like bullshit time travel stuff in it. So blanket spoilers ahead for the entire Attack on Titan manga anime. Probably also Game of Thrones. I know I'm gonna. It's inevitable. I just somehow relate this to that.
Oh man.
So the show starts with Eren Yeager, the show's protagonist, as this is essentially Bildungsromans, a nice coming of age story for young Eren Yeager, who's probably 4 or 5, maybe 10 at the start of the show. I don't know his age, doesn't matter. He lives in the walled district of Shinshigana. Sorry, I'm gonna.
What?
Where I thought you were gonna say the correct pronunciation. I'm just gonna butcher my way through all the names.
Shiganshina. I'm not saying it right either, but
there we go.
That's the spelling. Shiganshina.
Yeah, which is a part of this enormous walled off city, which makes up the last of mankind, who lives in these huge walled districts, which are basically broken up by different classes, where the poorest classes live on the furthest walls from the center of this entire city. Does the whole thing have a name? The whole last of humanity?
Like the actual city itself?
The whole thing, all of humanity. Because I know there's different districts, but I don't know if, you know.
Isn't it just, it's the large city within Marley?
Brutal. That is, nope. God, I've screwed this up already. So all of humanity lives behind this big walled city with tiered walls where the richer people live closer to the center of all the walls. And they live behind these walls because outside of all of these series of walls are these big Titan monsters, which are behind Reese and I. And these Titans are basically 20 to 50 foot high, unthinking killing machines that just eat people at will. But because everybody lives behind the walls, everything is all safe until the first episode of the show, where some new, bigger, scarier Titans show up and break holes in the wall. Titans pour inside. They kill Eren's mother, which he sees happen, and it sets him down the path of every good anime character as he waves his hand in the air and goes, I'll kill every Titan there is. I'll kill them all. And so the first full season is kind of split between Eren's radicalization as a young soldier, and then he joins the ranks of like the military to try to work his way up, with his only real goal being to return to his home, which is now basically unreachable because that entire Shinigami district is filled with Titans. So
Yeah,
they're all.
I apologize, but it is Eldia. It's the remnants of Eldia.
Do they know that at this point?
No, it's that's why I was having trouble locating it, is because of the different spots within the show that they know or don't know. So all I was finding was names of walls. Which yeah. So it's
Rose.
Right. So it's the remnants of Eldia on Paradis Island, for all intents and purposes.
Right, which the audience doesn't know and won't know for another 50 episodes, because that's how this show operates.
Right, so keep that in mind.
Yeah, so at the beginning of the show, you know nothing. You don't know what the Titans are other than big scary monsters, and that Eren is the main character. They start to introduce dozens of other characters. I don't want to go over any characters' names for the moment. I'll introduce them as need be. The only other two that matter at all from the beginning to the end are his best friend Armin and his pseudo half-sister / love interest Mikasa, who I believe it's revealed in season 1 is like a girl who is orphaned at the hands of some bandits that Eren and his father end up saving.
Yes.
Which is basically a direct result of Eren murdering as a 5-year-old these adult burglar bandit people.
Which he receives a pat on the head for, and good boy.
Yep. So Eren, Mikasa, and Armin, these three main characters, all join the military, and there's a bunch of stupid training montages and all this stuff. And I don't mean to say stupid as in to just be dismissive. It's just in the larger characterization of the show, everything in season 1 is completely trivialized later on. So it's not me that is meaning to demean it. It's the show's actual plotting that makes the first 2 seasons completely trivial.
Right. It
At any
basically
rate,
says, did you like all of that? Because none of that mattered.
yeah. Eventually they become trained up. They have this ODM gear, which is on this character behind Reese there, which is basically just like a series of like gas propelled grappling hooks that allow you to fly if there's like walls or big trees near you. And then there's swords, and the swords are used to cut up the Titans and kill them. So
omnidirectional mobility gear, which is pretty sick, honestly. From a mechanical perspective, it's pretty cool.
Yes, and it lends itself to the visual nature of a lot of the action scenes, which are 2 thumbs up, very lit, good stuff.
Yeah, it's also an interesting mechanic because they basically get away with allowing the characters to fly without flying. Like without giving them just superpowers and being like, yeah, they can just fly and fight these Titans. They basically are like, no. They use these really, really high-tech developments that they essentially can fly around sort of like Spider-Man, but with 2 like mechanical things shooting out that they attach to and fly around, and then they're wielding swords to cut while they're flying around, which is really, really awesome.
They don't get superpowers until later, at which point literally everyone gets superpowers. But
you get a superpower, you get a superpower, you get a Titan.
Yes. So at some point in season 1, it is revealed that Eren can turn into a Titan, but it isn't revealed why this is true or how, and he doesn't know how to control his power. But his ability to turn into one does help them turn the tide of a few battles.
And he starts to hate himself because he hates Titans. So he has like an internal conflict about this.
Yeah. Season 1 sets up a ton of mystery boxes meant to be opened later, basically punting on the plot, just saying we'll answer these questions later. The primary question of which is what is in Eren's basement, because they've just repeatedly, just like every anime does, shows flashbacks of something in the past that will be revealed in the future in greater detail, which is Eren's father going, I have a key to the basement, Eren, and one day when I return home, I will show you what is in this said basement, and then you will learn the truth of the world. That's not until the midway point. Actually, not even the midway point. The end of season 3. So, season 1 has a bunch of battles. Season 2 is primarily all battles. In between, there are some bits and pieces of the politicking of the Great Wall country / city of Eldia. I don't really care to go into detail about the politicking between these characters because, like I said, it is all trivialized later on in the show. The strength of season 1 and 2, I think, is the ability to set up compelling mystery boxes and introduce these mysteries, like what is the nature of the Titans? Because, like, as epic as a lot of the battles are, the characters themselves don't really know what's going on, and they often will remark, is this a dream? Is this a nightmare? Why am I here? Why am I doing this? What is going on? Especially before they're all horribly eaten, because the show takes the time to give a name and some characteristics to every single character before they get ripped in half and gobbled up by these monstrosities.
It does rip your heart out several times.
Yes. Pretty much every time they introduce a new character, and it's like, this character is such a nice person. They're just kind of just stopped,
and they have this one strength that everyone like that they like fit in really well with like the rest of the fighters, and they're like, no, this guy will really help things.
Yeah.
We could really use someone with these skills. Nah.
Yes, they're all tinged with nationalistic zeal. There's always triumphant music as they go into battle, even though it pretty much ends tragically for all of them. Season 2 actually I think it's the end of season 1, reveals that one of Eren's other friends from the training camp was a Titan, and then in season 2 it's revealed that 3 more of them were Titans. But the nature of their powers is still completely unclear. Why they were there is unclear. It's not until season 3 when the protagonist forces finally decide to sort of team up with Eren, who's used as like a bargaining chip and a prisoner by the different factions of power within the walled city. Eventually, it's revealed that within these Titan powers, it's all because some royal lady with special blood long ago in the past got some power from some sort of devil monster, and all of her children have the power to become Titans that are thinking and powerful. And there's 9 of them, and they all have different special powers. It's all rather convoluted, and I don't want to get into the details of it now because, once again, they elaborate more on it in the final season. But these answers are finally sort of capped off by the protagonists fighting back against the 3 main evil titans, one of which is behind Reese there. There's a series of very climactic battles, which they eventually take back this initial Shinigami, just butchering this name. Shiganshina district, my bad. And once they take it back, just every battle is like, this is why it's related to Game of Thrones, because every battle is like, they just killed us all, man. They killed us all. There were hundreds of us. Now there's only 6. And in the next battle, there's just another 200 people they use. And it's the numbers go from like, they killed literally 99% of our entire force. And then the next battle is back to full strength. So in a consequential battle in which the leader of the heroic scout troop leads a suicide charge, which kills all but one guy whose name is like Flock, who becomes a villain later in the show.
Flock.
Yes, yeah. That's something we'll talk about later, is the difference between the dubbed and subtitled versions. They get to Eren's basement, and it's revealed that this walled city is actually not the end of humanity, and outside of the walls, they're actually on a very small island as a part of a very big world, just like the one we live in. The closest analogy is basically that Eldia would be like Kyoto. It's just like one city on the island of Japan, covered in horrible Titan monsters, which is just one small island as a part of a much bigger world. And the world at large, as it turns out, hates this one island because in the past, the king of the island used the power of the Titans to kill massive amounts of people worldwide and attempt to subvert the rule of law and create his own power. So in season 4, we switch narratives and find out Marley, another country who is the primary enemy of this Eldian island, Parody Island, is in the middle of fighting their own wars. They control the power of several of these titans through the lineage of the special royal blood. And so in controlling these titans, they are able to be one of the dominant countries in the world, and they're able to win other wars, but it's sort of, the tide is turning technologically where other countries of humanity are building weapons that can kill titans. And so they realize they need to take all the Titans back from this little Parody Island so that they can use the ultimate power of the ultimate whatever Titans to take over the world. They fail. Eren shows up on the island and does a big killing in Marley, and he gets more Titan powers. When he returns home, he gets in a lot of trouble. There's more convolution with the political plots and who's on whose side, and eventually Eren basically commits himself to evil and decides that instead of killing all the Titans, which was his goal for the first 3 seasons of the show, his new goal is, I need to genocide humanity because they're no good. And so he radicalizes a group within the walls of Eldia, which call themselves Yeagerists, and they depose the current government by feeding the elites of Eldia some kind of tainted wine that turns them into Titans. And then a core group of the main protagonists, which includes both some of the Marleyans who betrayed them initially in the first 3 seasons, and then the core group of scouts, which is like Mikasa and Armin and all these other characters whose names I haven't said. They join together, fight the Yeagerists, and eventually have to fight against Eren, who turns into, he goes ultimate form and unleashes the walls, which it turns out are filled with Titans, which are basically all just the biggest versions of all the Titans, and as they walk through the earth, they cause nuclear blasts and volcanic destruction everywhere they go. So then Eren unleashes these Titans on the world and ends up killing 80% of humanity's population before the final group of heroes fights Eren and defeats him. And in the midst of this, there's all this background stuff where there's a special place out in the stars or deep within the heads of all the Eldians, which is called the Paths, which is
Yeah.
this spectral zone outside of space and time in which Ymir, the initial inheritor of the Titan's power, still exists after thousands of years. And then they just exposition dump tons and tons of information on you about the way in which these paths work and how Eren's younger brother, or not younger brother, older brother Zeke, who is the Beast Titan behind Reese there, uh, he had the goal of wiping out the Titans by sterilizing the entirety of the Eldian population so that there would no longer be Titans and the world could finally live in peace. Eren rejects this premise and says, no, the actual solution is to genocide the whole world, but let's leave it in Ymir's hands, which allows this 2,000-year-old pseudo ghost to harness the power of the nuclear bomb Titans, decimate the world's population. In the end, the good guys defeat Eren. There's some convolution, which we'll get into, I think, eventually in a little bit. They defeat Eren, and everybody who's still alive lives happily ever after.
Yeah, basically.
Sorry, I wanted to just push through that so we could
No,
get into the more interesting stuff. But
yeah, I was gonna say I was attempting to remain silent in order to get to the end so that we could work our way backwards. Excellent, well done. Obviously there's more to add.
Brushed over a lot.
Right. But yeah, we're not trying to be reductionist here. More just trying to get through plot in order to then get to bigger and better things, hopefully. So we apologize if we butcher the names or say a name incorrectly, as I did Marley when I meant Eldia, but you know, it's gonna happen. Yeah, we're humans. So anyway, what are your impressions of season 1? I think is kind of how I want to work our way through here. What do we like? What could have been better? What really sticks out?
So I have 3 views that I'll sort of share. One is the view, sort of the cold view of watching it, having not known anything about it and not knowing the end of the show or anything, and just viewing it as its own material. I think it's great. The action stuff works. It's very suspenseful. It's a bit scary. I wouldn't go so far as to call Attack on Titan a horror show, though there are many elements of horror within it. I don't think it ever really deliberately goes down the path of being like horror content, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's like heart-wrenching stuff and like brutal stuff, but it's not, I don't want to say it's, I don't know. Would you say that there are transgressive scenes or?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
Transgressive? No. I wouldn't call the show transgressive. If all the bloodlines and stuff had to do with like thousands of years of inbreeding, then yes. but since they don't go the Game of Thrones route and keep it a little cleaner, no, I wouldn't say so.
Familial threshing. Sorry.
Yeah. At least I don't think that's a part of it. The fact that like genetic purity is an element is like a little obnoxious, but I think that does fit well within the fantasy genre, not as much in the anime genre. Because by and large, this is like a fantasy show with all the conventions of anime, as opposed to like a by the numbers anime show with some fantasy conventions, if that makes sense.
That's a good clarification, yeah.
So that's one part. I think that this is just like a really entertaining action series with a well-built world. The aesthetics of everything mesh together really nicely, like the design of all the walls, the equipment that they use, the setup and structure of their government. Just enough information is given to you that you kind of know what's happening in the moment, but you're as equally subjectively confused as the protagonists as they're forced to become soldiers as opposed to, you know, the political people behind everything.
Yeah, I think that works really well, and it also builds intrigue and like an element of mystery where you just find yourself wanting to binge it because there's just so many like little breadcrumbs that really make you want to just keep going. The same way that the characters want to keep fighting, but also want to keep trying to dig deeper, get to the basement with the secrets, as it were.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing, is that, you know, at the end of you being beaten by the stick of violence in the show, the carrot on the other end is just all the secrets. Literally, it's the same shot is shown 100 times through the show. of Grisha, Eren's dad, dangling a key and going, "Don't worry, Eren. Later in the basement, I'll tell you everything." Literally takes them like 60 episodes to get to this stupid basement.
Yeah, but like that metaphorically is in God knows how many books and movies of like, oh, the key to unlocking the mysteries of the world is in a basement. You gotta dig deep. You gotta go down in order to become enlightened. But is it actually enlightenment?
I mean, how many episodes are there of Naruto?
No. We gotta stay here.
Well, I only mention that because Naruto is like 2 different shows, right? And combined, it's something like 400 or 500 episodes. And this it covers all the ground and more than Naruto covers in 1/5 the time. And even this show is longer than it needs to be. So
that's
just as a 1-to-1 in the genre.
That was what I was trying to bring up for those uninitiated to anime or who've only seen like 3 shows. There's a lot of anime that just goes on and on and on and on forever. Whereas this is quite well self-contained, despite having a little bit too much at times. I really like this season 1. It asks a ton of questions of the audience as well as the main characters, and I think for the most part you're like in lockstep with the main characters for having enough information. And there's so many references to the walls and like the mysteries of the walls that I think works really well, where you know that the walls are keeping out all of these bad things, but then also there's at times bad things still happen within the walls, and there's mysteries about who built the walls and what's going on with the walls, basically, which I think works well metaphorically as well as literally.
How so?
As the walls, well, what are the walls keeping out and what are the walls keeping in? But
no,
that also
metaphorically,
right? So a wall is obviously a shield, like it's a giant shield, right? But later on, the shield turns into a sword. So like the protecting power that one has then is being wielded as a weapon.
I'm not. How does that relate to the?
It's like they sprinkle in these moments of who built the walls and what is their purpose. So when you're trying to decipher where these walls originated from, you're asking the questions with the characters in order to try to figure that answer out. But then the answer is that these are used as a weapon, not as a shield.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. I mean, they just don't know what they are. And so there's like the idiots who worship the walls as being built by God to protect them. Or there's most people who believe, these walls are meant to keep the Titans out, when the reality is that, the walls are actually a deterrent. The walls are there to keep the Titans in. Because the walls are filled with the nuke Titans, so that if anyone in the world ever attacked this little island, they immediately and without flinching assassinate everyone in the entire world, which is
right. So as a
deterrent.
Right. So as a metaphor, like as an arms race, right? If you have bigly bombs, these act as a deterrent for other people to not attack you. The threat is there. The shield is there for you to be attacked. But then if someone attacks you, then you have to wield those bombs as a weapon instead of a shield. But then it also begs the question that these things are monstrous forces that are outside of your control that then can be turned on you to destroy you. Just depends on who's in control of them.
Right.
Anyway,
I know.
What?
I was gonna say I don't want to be too negative, so I'll move on.
Okay. I didn't really want to talk about that now. I was just mentioning the walls and you were asking questions.
Yeah, I'm hell-bent on criticizing the show, apparently. Just can't get away from it.
We should probably mention that, well, I guess you mentioned what happens with Eren's mother that sort of triggers his anger at the beginning.
She gets eaten.
Yeah, which makes him very, very upset, obviously, as any kid would be.
Yeah, it radicalizes him. But those were going to be the other two ways in which I view season one.
Okay.
Like the second way is how season one sets up Eren's arc, since Eren is the only major character who really undergoes a significant amount of change or important decision making, even though, as we learn, not a single character in the show makes a decision until the final episode. And so he is pushed down the path of radicalization because of the loss of his mother. And so much of the season makes up then him witnessing further atrocities at the hands of the Titans towards his friends and his inability or powerlessness to effect change, which radicalizes him further, which I think works pretty effectively in season one. And then the third way to view season one is having already seen the show and knowing what will happen later as an effect back on it. And it is actually a great rewatch because there's a ton of, not only is there a ton of foreshadowing for what is to come, there are a lot of direct references to the way in which Eren, using the paths, is able to time travel and manipulate people in the past. And so it's explicit in the fourth season the way in which Eren does this, where he's able to like communicate with people and basically tell them to or not to do something. And so there are characters who are like, why am I doing this? I don't want to do this. Or why am I not doing this? I want to be doing this, which is just a direct reference to Eren going through and touching every single moment to make sure that the entire plot plays out just the way it's supposed to so that he can do the ending. Which, by and large, for how few plot holes the show has on the whole, is impressive that they were able to get that many little reference points in what would have been 2009 from the manga or 2013 from the anime correct for what would come, over a decade later. So
Yeah.
it seems like the author, who shockingly we haven't mentioned a single author or creative person behind this show yet,
Oops.
seems to have understood generally what the plot was going to be from the beginning. And it is Hajime Isayama. Sorry, Hajime, butchered your name. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
this
did you
guy
have
wrote
anything? Sorry, go ahead.
no, that's it. Just this guy wrote the whole manga, and I believe wrote the whole anime. You don't see his name anywhere on it. Brutal. I don't know who made the anime. Somebody.
Chief, directed by Tetsuro Araki and directed by Masashi Koizuka with Yasuko Kobayashi for season 2 under IG Port's Wit Studio. Yeah, I'm on season 2 now. Did you have anything more to add about season 1?
No, that's it.
Okay. I seem to recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, since you watched this much more recently than I seem to recall a lot of nonsense in woods in season 2, and like a village that's nearby, right?
Yes, season two has Bertolt and Reiner are running to the woods with Eren having captured him. That also
Eren
happens in season one.
Eren capturing Reiner. Oh, they capture Bertolt, right?
No,
Who's captured?
Eren.
Got it. Okay.
There is some stuff in the woods. Yeah, there's basically some battles in the woods. Then the Beast Titan shows up and
Right.
makes Titans inside of the wall. And then there's like 4 episodes at a watchtower, which has literally no bearing on the plot.
It's a great episode, but has little to do with the plot.
Yeah, basically the stories within these episodes are worthless and don't need to exist within the larger nonsensical time travel paths coordinate crap. But they're all good. They're all well executed. It's suspenseful, nail biting.
Definitely.
Lots of nameless scouts put their hands over their hearts and the swords in their hands. It's dying for no reason. I guess it's actually not for no reason. It's all there so they can save Historia, who's of the noble lineage. But yeah, I don't have anything else to add about season 2. Season 2 is like half the length of season 1 and season 3. Like I said before, these episodes are very short. I mean, your normal half-hour TV show episode is about 22 to 23 minutes long. These are 4 minutes shorter than that. So they'll show up as being 23 to 24 minutes long with no advertising. That's with a minute and a half intro and a minute and a half exit which is just the most anime thing ever of we need to have the hype music at the beginning and then the somber music at the end. But that's just the packaging of anime. But that extra 3 minutes is critical because it knocks the runtime of every episode down to about 20 minutes. But then every episode normally, instead of having a cold open with new info, is just a recap of the previous episode, which knocks off another 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's true.
What you're actually looking at in season 2 is about 4 hours of content, whereas season 1 and 3 are each 9, 10, and season 4 is the longest one.
Yeah, I think some things I know we hardly talked about season 2, because it is probably the least important. Well, it just is the least important.
Battle of Trust.
Yeah. You discussed the Beast Titan. The very end of season 2, I believe there's a mysterious man that emerges from the Beast Titan's back when he's like up on the wall. And he says, "Not just yet," I believe. It's probably worth noting Eren and Mikasa come face to face with the picture behind you, the smiling Titan that ate his mom, and Hannes has to sacrifice himself, which sucks, to save them. In addition to that, there's probably 2 more characters that are worth mentioning aside from those. There's a lot of stuff with Connie and his mother, which is a disabled Titan. Erwin is the character I was going to mention, who's like the leader of, oh God, what are they called? The leader of the ODM gear. The Scouts, yeah. He's the leader of the Scouts, and then you have Levi.
The Scouts are literally just the Marines.
Yeah, right.
They're the first line of battle. They do all the scouting missions, and that they're always on the front lines of.
That's why I can never remember their name, because it's like a misnomer in my head calling them Scouts, because like they're just flying around slicing up Titans or baddies, which is not what I imagine Scouts as, but they function as both. But yeah, there's Erwin, who's the leader of the Scouts, and then Captain Levi, who I have an affinity for. He's my favorite character, but that might just be a based take.
The laconic badass who has no feelings and is a serial killer.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah, I imagine if you polled the average Attack on Titan fan, Levi would be the most popular character by a mile.
Yeah.
I would hope, at least. I mean, he's clearly the best character in the show. The man who can't be stopped no matter what, with the tortured backstory, and he just loves killing.
He gets just completely wrecked multiple times, like body torn asunder, like missing, like just completely drenched in blood. But keeps fighting on. He can never be defeated.
He never is. He's one of the few characters to survive the full show.
Somehow, despite definitely dying like 2 or 3 times, but didn't actually die.
He dies at least half a dozen times in the final 2 episodes.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, we definitely needed to mention Erwin and Captain Levi. But
yeah, Erwin is this no-nonsense Marine commander who's like, they keep saying that he's like a great commander, and when it comes to his actual strategies, they're just these like half-baked like gambles that they're much more akin to like Ulysses S. Grant strategies of war, as opposed to like a Schwarzkopf for an Eisenhower.
Isn't he
just speaking of American generals?
Isn't he just constantly trying to either do like a bait and switch, or like divide and conquer, or just like throw everyone at the attack? Isn't that his
pretty
like
much
3 main
just
strategies?
Only uses bait strategies.
Yeah.
Bait, attack, and retreat. Those are his primary ones. But the problem with the bait strategies against a superior foe is that you're just sacrificing. You're just throwing them into the meat grinder.
Oh yeah, which happens every single time they fight.
It is worth noting, though, and they do give him this distinct characteristic that he's one of the only people that actively keeps saying, I think there might actually be humans on the other side of the wall. Like he's the only one that says like, yeah, our history books are weird. Like there's something about the precision of this language that implies there might be humans out on the other. And everyone else is like, no, you're just a stupid Marine. Shut up, Marine.
Yeah.
He dies in a suicidal charge at the end of season 3, which is quite epic and does actually eventually then help the good guys.
He has some pretty amazing lines. My soldiers rage, my soldiers scream, my soldiers fight. He's just an incredible leader. And when he dies, you're just left feeling like, God damn it. Who's possibly going to lead? Like he was just the best leader that they had. He was the best of us. And now we're in darkness. The brave fallen, the anguished fallen, the ones who will remember them are us, the living. And my personal favorite, we die trusting the living who follow to find meaning in our lives, which is pretty brutal. With then like if you're rewatching the show, obviously, and know what happened. Yeah, so you good to move on to season 3?
Yeah, I have no more to say about season 2.
All right, I think this is a great pause point. We will be right back with season 3, and then we'll work our way towards the end. And we're back. So it's worth noting, actually, because we just didn't mention the music at all, which is playing through my head right now. But the intro songs for each season are really awesome, and they really set the tone for each season. Yeah, if you enjoy this show, I'm sure the music is playing through your head. But if you haven't seen it, I mean, they're just great pieces of art as standalone pieces. Anyway, jumping back into season 3, which is probably my favorite season of the show. This one is quite long.
It's like 25 episodes.
I guess it's not as long as the last episode, is it?
What do you mean?
How long is season 4?
Like 30 episodes.
Oh, okay, so they're basically the same.
The show is like 90 episodes.
Oh shit, my bad. I had it up and I was reading through season 3. Yeah.
So
and then I jumped ahead.
Season 1 is 25 episodes. They released it all as like a normal show. Like they, 1 episode a week for 25 weeks. Season 2, 12 episodes, which came out 4 years later. And then they did a normal release schedule for from season 2 to 3. It was 2017 for 2, and then season 3 released in 2 parts, basically. So it was kind of like season 3 was 2 seasons, but those 2 seasons would have been the same as season 2.
Mm-hmm.
None of this is truly very important, like distinguishing, season to season, because both those parts, which make up the 22 episodes of season 3, flow pretty coherently through the story. And then the same was true of season 4, which came mostly right after season 3. The part that you were talking about where you thought it was over is because season 4, which is also split up into 2 parts, was like 16 episodes, which is kind of one arc, and then the last 12 episodes. And then it ends with the beginning of the Rumbling, which is like the genocide against humanity. And then there were 2 like special episodes, which were each like an hour and a half. I want to say something like that.
Yeah.
They're basically just juiced up movies to cap off the series. And those came out sometime later. So I think those who weren't familiar with the manga basically generated their own answers for the Rumbling was the end of the show. And then via gossip of the uninitiated kept perpetuating that, that was the end of the show. Because logically, it kind of makes sense for the end of some of the arcs without explaining everything. But I had no idea, and I never looked into it. Because like I said before, I watched the first season when it aired, or like a year after it aired, I think on your recommendation, and then didn't watch it again for close to 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, part of that recommendation was because I enjoyed it, and part of the reason I watched it in the first place was because I had students come in every single day like losing their minds of like, oh my god, Mr. Fisher, you got to watch this show, you got to watch this. And I did the thing that I do every time students recommend something, where I go, well, why should I watch it, just to see if it's actually something good, or if it's something that is mostly style over substance, which I don't think this is. But all right, so picking up the thread here, season 3, some sort of notable features from this season would be, this season kind of like one of the big conflicts is you start to have, instead of humans versus titans, you have humans versus humans. And this starts to pit the main characters against other human beings that are trying to basically fight against them.
Yeah.
And it kind of starts to show the deviation point from some of the characters who suspect that there's like other things going on, but then also their allegiance their allegiance changes, or they start to question their allegiance at least.
Right. Well, it's revealed that the king is not even the real king, and the real king rules from the shadows, and the real king is the one that's been hiding all the secrets about the nature of the Titans and where the Titans' power comes from and who actually has it and who can control it. And so Irvin, via the scouts, basically is the one that spearheads the movement to uncover the mysteries, to find out the conspiracy at the heart of the government. And then he works with Pixis, who's just like this random general captain guy.
I forgot about Pixis, yeah.
Just like some eccentric bald man who's always drunk. And they depose / do a bloodless coup of the fake pretender government, with the aims of installing the real king, Rob Rice's daughter, Historia, as the new ruler.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the overarching plot of season 3. Sprinkled in between is the Bertolt Reiner stuff and the Beast Titan stuff, but functionally they resolve the like bloodless coup plotline first. There's also Kenny Ackerman, who is Levi's uncle, but that's kind of a plot that starts in the middle of nowhere and doesn't really go anywhere. You could argue that it's just there to help give Levi some character development, but I find that it doesn't actually develop or change Levi's character. It simply tells you something about him, but it doesn't really change who he is. He doesn't learn anything from it. He doesn't grow or change because of it. But yeah, there's all these different plots where Eren is captured, and they're going to have Historia, who was another friend of theirs from the Scout Corps training montage in season 1. Somehow every single person that was a part of the training montage in season 1 is like ultra important to all these super plots later. Except for one of the guys you mentioned, Connie. They're literally just some talentless scrub that is brought along on every mission.
That you feel bad for, but in the same breath, you also are like, what is your purpose here, buddy? Yeah.
You learn that they learn that all the Eldians can be turned into Titans, but only pure-blooded Eldians with the royal blood can fully use the power of the special Titans. But some of them can use, like Eren is not a pure blood, but he can still use the Titan power just less effectively than the pure blood. So the king wants his daughter to turn into a Titan, which would be the one behind me, a mindless animal. And then if the mindless ones eat the super powerful ones, then they become the super powered ones, which means they can turn back into humans.
Mm-hmm.
Which is part of like a series of convoluted reveals that sort of explains the Titan's power.
And also basically pushes a number of characters to save other characters by like having them gain the superpowers as opposed to dying.
Yeah, which is then how the 3rd season ends. They successfully capture Bertolt in there's a huge battle at the end between all the main characters. And the Beast Titan, which turns out is Eren's older half brother Zeke.
Zika.
Yeah. Yeah, we haven't gotten to that yet, the distinction between the dub and the sub version. Zeke, as the Beast Titan, saves Reiner and ends up being able to take him and some other special Titan back home to Marley, but Bertolt is successfully captured, and they feed Bertolt to a Titan turned Armin because Armin was incinerated by a pseudo-nuclear blast by Bertolt's Titan. And this is like an entire episode.
It's wild.
Is the choice between saving Irvin and Armin, because Commander Irvin is the one who's this big brain, gambit, super genius commander guy who rallies everyone with his zealous speeches. And Armin shows that he's a pretty smart tactician, but he's much younger. And ultimately, Eren and Mikasa are the ones that are like, let's save our best friend. And everyone else, led by Levi, is like, we should save the commander. And then at the very last second, Levi is like, I don't know, he did kind of kill himself, so let's just leave him dead. And then they bring Armin back instead.
Yeah, and the cruel irony of them choosing to save Armin is that they save him by turning him into a monster, by cursing him. So they save him by cursing him, basically.
Right. Because the power that is in that Titan, which is called the Colossal Titan, is that you're basically a nuclear bomb. That Titan, like each of the special Titans have certain abilities, which I don't really care about any of that. That to me represents the worst aspects of like mech anime or monster fighting anime, which is basically just, Godzilla or, the worst instincts of a show like Evangelion. But it all works within the universe. It's just like a silly excuse to have them have different powers in battle, which, yeah, I don't want to get too far into that. But yeah, Armin is like, by and large, the most pacifistic of the core group of characters, and so giving him the power of the nuclear bomb Titan is, as you say, tragic.
Yeah, because it's something that he probably wouldn't want. Like it doesn't align with what he would want, but it's also the only way they can save him.
Yeah, and he says that after they save him, because other characters criticize them for not saving the great commander and instead saving this little smart kid. And he's like, I didn't ask to be saved. I was ready to be dead.
This season ends setting up the end of the show as well, because basically the big reveal at the end of this thematically is that they realize that they now have even more enemies, despite them being free. And Eren is basically wondering if everyone would rather like he asks the sort of like big question of the show is like, do you want to be free? And if you do want to be free, are you okay with killing everyone?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the core theme of the entire show is a conversation between Armin and Eren close to the beginning, which is all about whether or not they can be free. Because they both, like, Armin is the one that mentions, like, yeah, somewhere beyond these walls there's an ocean, which is just an endless body of water. And Eren is like, oh, I want to be free, but I don't know if I believe in that. And so then those are sort of the two different idealistic, completely naive versions of freedom. And so they both view themselves as trapped in some way, which is accurate given that they don't actually really make a lot of decisions. It's all manipulation by future Eren.
I would argue that this is this to me is like one of the best parts of the show if you don't look at it within how it fits into the plot, but more in how it applies like thematically. So like for kids to be thinking about freedom or to I don't want to name a conflict right now globally or geopolitically, but if a kid is trying to figure out like, why do people die, mommy, daddy, why are people killing each other, right? As all kids ask, like, why can't everyone be free? Well, it brings up the answer is it always comes down to one of like a set of four things, which would be ideology, land, money, or power. I mean, I guess you could also add number 5 would be that someone else has wronged you, which is
Revenge.
right, revenge, which is also examined in the show. So them wanting to be free, excuse me, is also in direct conflict with who they view as enemies of trying to kill them, which I think relates quite well to war in general and what we see it play out in our world as well. So like even if they are not feeling free, like you could argue that they do have freedom to some extent, but also the feeling of freedom and security is key to them and is also key to, I would say, all of us on some level. But then the bigger question is, to what extent do we need to feel safe and secure? Does that mean that we need to kill everyone that is our enemy or everyone that we view as our enemy? And how do we classify someone as our enemy, which we see constantly playing out across history, especially as Americans? Yeah, sorry, I don't mean to go on like a too big of how this show relates to geopolitics, but I really like this aspect of the show, like this part of it, and just wanted to pause here before we get into maybe where some things fall apart later on, because I think this is like sort of the crux of the show, to me.
I agree. I mean, the show is about two things. One is about free will versus determinism, and the other is about the cyclical nature of war.
Mhm.
And I think the cyclical nature of war is the part that overshadows the freedom and basically says there is no free will. Everything is determined when you live in a society that is warlike. And the show basically condemns humanity to be doomed to an endless cycle of war with no hope because of, how easy it is for everything to be misconstrued in a state of war. Because it's too easy to like create martyrs. It's too easy to search for revenge. It's very difficult to search for similarities. It's very difficult to not, pillory or straw man, create an enemy out of nothing. And so, yeah, a lot of their hopes for free will are destroyed by the war. I mean, the one shimmering hope at the end of the show is Eren talking to the past self of Armin in the future about this freedom, the freedom that Armin has by the end of the show, and the cost of both peace and freedom for not only the world, but personally for Armin, and the way in which basically, you know, that would be it's kind of like Aaron's argument is more akin to like a Thanos argument, like we have to kill
Yeah,
everybody to have a world that can't remember the past in order to, not know what it lost to move forward.
right.
Because that's what the second half of season 4 is most concerned with, is it finally gets to that ethereal spiritual part of the paths and all of the free will and determinism, which is basically an ideological battle between Zeke and Eren and what their influence from their father Grisha was on both of their ideologies. Because they both sort of want the same thing, which is to remove the Titan curse from the Eldians. And Zeke's solution is we need to work through research and scientific rigor to sterilize the Eldian people so no more Titan possible people are born. Whereas Eren is like, no, that's not the solution. The solution is this stupid convoluted time travel bullshit where I kill 80% of the world. And then the curse is lifted because of this stupid little girl married to the king 2,000 years ago stuck in the stars in the desert, which ends up being the way it works. But that's also because, that was the way it was written. And that's all connected to the way in which Mikasa inherently loves Eren despite his flaws as a genocidal murderer. And so her ability to choose sacrificing her love for him to kill him to stop him is what Ymir wanted to do but didn't do because of her love for her protector slash slaver king.
And that's what season 4 is.
Yeah. Sorry, I jumped. I did a couple. I did the jumping jacks to get there.
It's okay. I wasn't gonna stop you. I mean, there is like a ton of other things about season 4. What did we miss there?
I mean, quite a bit of it is what you sort of just touched on. Like, there are a lot of smaller plots and arcs with newer characters that show the way in which young children are re-indoctrinated into this war from the Marleyan side, how they're treated and taught as youths to hate the Eldians because they're devils. And then they travel to Eldia and they're like, you're evil devils. And the Eldians are like, what are you talking about? Eat your eggs. And like, there's just, then it's built up. And then it's like the kid shot Sasha. And then Sasha's dad is like, oh, how could you do this? Eat your eggs. And there's just a lot of, it feels repetitious.
How could you do this? Eat your eggs.
They're in a restaurant, like eating a nice meal. And there's all this like...
God damn it.
There's definitely a part where they say like shut up. They might not be eggs, but they're eating something. But yeah, I think season 4 ends up retreading a lot of ground to hammer the point home to the detriment of the show on the whole, mainly because, you want the final answers. You want to know what happened with the past, the nature of the Titans' powers, who Ymir is, what Zeke's role is in the show, Grisha's influence, and Eren's ability to time travel. All of that feels a lot more important than like the precise way in which the Yeagerists depose the newly formed Eldian Parody Island government, which deposed the previous fake kid. Like all of that stuff feels so small in comparison. And so to then repeat plot elements you've done before from the perspective of new Marleyan characters doesn't feel like it's adding much. It's telling you something you already know and showing it to you in a different way. So I don't dislike it because it's all executed well. Like nothing about it is done necessarily poorly. It's just from like a time versus message goal. I think it could have been done more cleanly. But who am I to criticize like a long running manga for doing it that way? Because it's like, you get paid per issue. You don't get paid for the full story.
Yeah.
Charles Dickens would be proud.
Paid per word, right?
Right.
Yeah. Thankfully we've gotten away from that model, or maybe not so thankfully. I mean, that would be nice as a writer. That'd be fantastic.
We did not get away from that model. One Piece has sold over 500 million copies. We'll never escape this hell. We're trapped forever. Cattle in a pen, just as Armin said. Sorry, One Piece fans. I've never seen One Piece nor read it, so it's low-hanging fruit for me to criticize something that has literally thousands of episodes and could not possibly still be of the high quality that it maybe once was.
Jose is somewhere screaming. No, I mean, let's still kind of go through like a couple big things for season 4, because there are some. I do agree with you that it does retread the same ground in a lot of ways, and it's somewhat needless. But at the same time, just for clarity, I guess we could give some highlights for some of the main characters. I mean, there's battle.
Go for it.
Okay. I was gonna say there's battle upon battle before, as you have highlighted, convolution upon convolution, where, I mean, you said this in the first part before we took a break, but basically it results in all of the battles come down to the fact that Eren has contacted himself in the past in order to set up the demise of humanity, but also in order to pit himself against his friends, in order for them to destroy the Titans, basically. So what is Eren's goal? Eren's goal is to, you could view it one of two ways. To destroy, would you say destroy humanity entirely, or just destroy the humanity outside of Eldia?
No, Eren's goal is to remove the curse of the Titans.
Okay, I was gonna say to remove the enemies outside of Eldia, but the second option was what you just said, which is to destroy the capability of the Titans. Yeah, which ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, that basically just frees the Eldian people from a literal curse.
Which ultimately comes to pass because there's a ton of fighting basically in the sky on the back of a Titan, where other Titans are fighting other Titans, and then there's like magic Titans that keep popping up. It's wild.
Appropriately epic and...
Yeah. it like I'm when I say wild and shake my head, I don't necessarily think it's bad. It is very epic. But yeah, then at the end, oh boy, how do I get into this? Basically Mikasa has to remove Eren's head. She has to kill him. And then they put his head underneath a tree, and it's the same tree that he used to go to as a kid. So it's like referenced at the beginning of all of this.
Yeah, I think the one element we may not have mentioned is like the technical way in which Eren receives the memories of the past and future.
Mm-hmm.
Because part of the power of the Titans is that you have the memories of the past iterations of the Titan. And if you're the founding Titan, you also have the memories of the future of the people who will become the founding Titan. And so you only can get these memories if you touch somebody of royal blood if you're not of royal blood. But if you are of royal blood and have the founding Titan,
Mm-hmm.
then your will is subsumed by the OG king.
Yeah.
Who's just like a genocidal maniac.
So go ahead.
It's not until Eren touches Historia, which happens at the end of season 3, that he gains these memories. And so by the beginning of season 4 is when he's reformulated this plan through the paths and through his memories.
And so he is quite different.
Yeah, he's literally a different character.
Yeah.
Because he time traveled ad infinitum.
Yeah. But he also looks different and acts different because, like you said, he is different.
He goes from being a very annoying edgelord to an even more annoying doomer. I'm not the biggest fan of Eren as he exists socially with the other characters because he's just like an annoying asshole.
Yeah. He is pretty narcissistic. What was I gonna say? Where was I going with this?
He's a lot more empathetic in the subtitled version than the dubbed version, where he is significantly more annoying.
He's more annoying in the dubbed.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't watch that shit. I just watched the subs. Which one did you watch?
Both.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not coming at anyone who watches either. We're not here to make those moral judgments on our audience. Anyway,
it's literally exactly the same. Just exactly the same. For a well-made show.
The opposite of a narcissist would be Armin. Armin, it is worth noting, basically he discovers Zeke or Zika, because I just love that pronunciation of his name. It's just so much better than Zeke. Oftentimes words are better in Japanese, honestly, as we do continual bits across our episodes. Armin discovers Jika inside the paths, and he basically talks with him, and Armin realizes that Jika has come to the conclusion that trying to escape the paths is useless because everything simply dies in the end, which is a great moment, I would say, because as teenagers, as burgeoning adults, and even adults, in the face of a dark world, it's a very easy defeatist conclusion to arrive at, is why do anything if we're all going to die? Or why love anything if it's all going to go to shit? And Armin convinces him that small things in life do have meaning, and that's ultimately what makes life worth living. Obviously, paraphrasing here, but this triggers Jika to remember times that he spent playing with another character and times from his past, and he remembers that he cherished those memories. And this kind of like helps bridge the gap between him being a human and him having all of the power of being a Titan. So this then triggers in the following episode where Jika basically sacrifices himself, and he allows Levi to decapitate him, which foreshadows Mikasa decapitating Eren. So you get the nice
right, since Levi and Mikasa are like cousins or half
yeah,
siblings. I don't remember which.
get an Ackerman. You get an Ackerman. It's Levi Ackerman, right? Is that his last name? You get an Ackerman cutting off the head of whatever Yeager. I guess Jeek is not a Yeager, but he's cutting off the half brother of Eren, and then Mikasa, another Ackerman, cutting off the head of Eren. So you get that mirrored, which I think is nice, symbolically. Not nice, the removal of heads, but symbolically speaking. Sorry, why were you laughing when I was explaining that?
Oh, because the bit where Zeke turns good is based on his childhood memory of playing baseball, which connects directly to his moment of worst genocide in the show when he plays baseball by mass murdering the scout troop, including Irvin.
Yeah, that is kind of funny that like him as a beast titan literally incorporates baseball.
The title episode is called Perfect Game, where he says, "I'll throw the perfect game," which involves him taking boulders, crushing them, and then hurling the debris as shrapnel to mass murder people. But then he's a good guy at the end. Kid show. Good guy.
Well, yeah, you gotta bring it back to Armin. It's those small moments, those butterfly moments that bring everything together.
This is a plastic bag in American Beauty.
Listen, if we don't have faith in those small moments and those butterflies, then life is meaningless and we'll all just be nihilists.
Vote for Trump.
All right, that's the end of our episode of Attack on Titan. No, all right. Where do you want to move from here? Because we did cover all of the episodes, as it were. But I think we can kind of move into some sort of bigger discussions.
I think I've said almost everything I have to say about the whole show. I'll mention the lady behind me.
Well, before you do that, I just want to compliment you on I think you've done well, not just dragging the show through the dirt, which can sometimes happen when you start discussing something that you and I like, but you just can't help yourself. I just want to preface this because I'm sure what you're about to say is quite a critique.
That I was so close to not critiquing it, but now that you've goaded me into it, just like the show's titular character Eren, I may have no choice but to pitch a perfect game here. Go for the shutout.
Titular? This show's not called Yeager.
Attack on Titan. He's the Titan that's attacking the world.
But the show is an Attack on Titan? What were you going to say about Smiling Titan?
Use the word titular wrong. Crucified. Can't say Shingenshina correctly? No problems.
You forgot you're in the presence
incorrect
of an
titular
English
use.
teacher.
Crucifixion. What I was going to mention was that the woman behind me, who is Grisha's first wife, Dina, who ends up eating Eren's mom, aka Grisha's second wife, represents the darkest moment of the show, which is a direct result of Eren having traveled in the past to the moment where the walls are initially broken by Bertholdt and Reiner, and Eren deliberately tells this Titan of what is functionally his stepmother, who's of royal blood, to go and eat his own mother to radicalize himself, which, it's, I think, the darkest moment of the show, because it's, Eren's commitment to his own goal means that he ruins his own life, radicalizing himself to move down this path.
I just realized that this show is sort of like a negative of Harry Potter.
How so?
Well, you have like completely like asymptotes, like inverse asymptote graph of Harry Potter versus Eren. Eren basically orchestrating himself to radicalizing himself in the past in order to cause all of this to happen, where you have Harry fighting for good alongside all of his friends. Obviously, it's just like this is like an inverse of the hero's journey.
Yeah, okay, I would agree with that. It's definitely a inverted or backwards take on the Bildungsroman,
Yeah.
whereby the protagonist, who within his period of the coming of age gains the ability to manipulate time, thus radicalizing himself to save the world in his way, which in the end technically makes him the hero. But that technicality is only the Eren, aka the writer, looking straight into the camera and saying, I'm the hero of this story, because this was the only way it could work, because I wrote it that way.
Yeah.
Which is as much as I want to go down that road without being too critical. So
I mean, there is a metaphorical way that you could look at it where the bullshittery could represent how we like revise our own past and we revise our own memory from our youth and from like moments in our youth where we are revising something in order to align with something bad that happened later on in life in order to justify why we do something bad in the future. So it was this one moment back in time when Sharon like just did a bad thing to me, so now I'm gonna justify doing these other bad things. Like I think it is referencing the way that we either misremember or we like really cling to bad stuff that happens that traumatizes us and then influences us in the future. Obviously, within the context of the show, like losing one's mom is devastating. But the fact that he orchestrates that, yeah, it is certainly the darkest moment. I don't know. I might be reading too far into it, which I can do, but I just figured that was worth mentioning.
Yeah. In terms of comparing it to, I couldn't say for sure where this fits in the larger canon of highly popular anime, because I'm not certain that I've seen enough of them to really give it a good comparative note. I imagine in general a lot of this type of coming of age shonen mech or war anime is along the same lines. I don't know that I'll ever really delve too deeply into the genre to find out. Maybe if there's ones that are as ubiquitously popular, I may do it. The conventions of anime and its adherence to a certain type of character stereotypical behavior and just really, really brutal filler plotting is what keeps me away from a lot of anime. And by and large, this show does a good job of not playing up those tropes and not diminishing itself with a tremendous amount of filler, even with its inverted time structure.
Yeah, we didn't actually mention the fact that the show is quite earnest in its pursuit, without having those fillers, but also without having the like whiny baby sort of like anime silly things that happen, which I know you and I are quite turned off by in any type of media, but it's very annoying in anime. Like you and I like the subgenres that are much more earnest and more focused rather than debasing oneself with either children who are super whiny and like the comic type of thing, or they just debase themselves by focusing on, you know, lewd stuff like accentuating a woman character who has no other function than to giant hooters and big booty. Which, you know, if that's what you're watching anime for, more power to you, I guess. We salute you. But that is certainly not the point of our podcast. I'm sure there are some podcasts that are out there that do that, but we're here to talk about stuff that doesn't do that. Anyway, I don't want to have an artistic debate over anime titties versus Titans, but anyway, that's
if you see behind me here, you can clearly see no nipples, which is why this is a good show. If the Titan had them, terrible show.
Yeah, that is a critical mechanic of the writing, that they remove all genitalia from the Titans. Could you imagine if the genitalia wasn't removed from the Titans? It's just like Armin turns into Colossal Titan. No, Armin, no.
It would be a very different show, that is for certain. Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say there are some elements, like there are certain characters that have that sort of childlike naivete, exuberant, like Sasha ate the potato lady ate the potato, but most of those bits are eventually paid off with the brutal reality of the world that they've built. So like Sasha eating the potato literally ends with Sasha being shot by accident by a child who then has to reconcile the murder of Sasha when her own father goes to eat a gourmet meal for free because of Sasha's love for food. So it's like, those little moments are actually well supported. Um, it doesn't waste your time that way, and I think it gets a lot of credit for that. The other thing I wanted to compare it to, not because I wanted to go. Yes, yeah, I agree. I wanted to compare it to Game of Thrones real quick.
Oh yeah.
And
I like this comparison.
Not because I wanted to go on another hate-filled rant against Game of Thrones, although that is clearly one of my favorite things to do.
Go read or go watch our Game of Thrones episodes. I think it's lockstep with the series and how people react to it.
All you'll find in that episode is a man slowly losing his mind.
I love how we didn't we record all those episodes back to back to back. So by the end we were just going off the fucking cliff, just like the show. Anyway,
it was like watching a disturbed individual ramp up into a manic episode and then just shut off I couldn't even talk at the end because I had just been so thoroughly angered.
The disturbed man had been wearing a straitjacket and was well fed, and then at the end they just took the straitjacket off, like injected you with like amphetamine and deprived you of food.
The amphetamines is the story of Game of Thrones. At any rate, the relation between the two shows, or perhaps even the source material, is the way in which it portrays radicalism and the ascent to power and then the use of power by the ruling class or by the rulers who have grown up poor. There's even the same relationships with like genetic purity, and so the two comparison points would be Daenerys and the Targaryens versus Eren and then the Eldian pure royal bloodline. And so what Attack on Titan does really well is showing the ways in which Eren is radicalized and all the steps along his radical way that he would eventually become the villain that he is in the final season of the show, ignoring the stuff at the end where he says, no, I'm actually the good guy, because it is a really effective take on the way in which you as the audience participate in Eren's radicalization and grow to hate the Titans and eventually grow to, hate the Marleyans and sort of try to side with him, where you still might be rooting for him even by the time he launches the rumbling. I don't know how you're really supposed to feel at the end of the show. Presumably you root against him because you're like, maybe humanity shouldn't be killed. But obviously that's very different than the radicalization or approach that Game of Thrones takes with one of its primary characters, and also the fact that the shows share the similarity that so much of the political plotting that they waste their time going through is useless because by the final season, there's literally just a switch flipped, and then it's like, oh, all the political bullshit's over, and now it's just about the person with the most powerful fantasy weapon, and that just will determine everything.
Right.
In Game of Thrones, it's just this one dragon can destroy the world, and in Attack on Titan, it's these nuclear bomb titans will destroy the world. The thing is, while Game of Thrones has all these important character moments for Daenerys as she grows more powerful and sort of becomes like the leader of an ideological political movement, all the hints are there that she's evil. Season 1 ends with her being willing to sacrifice her unborn child to save her husband. When that fails, she burns a woman alive in vengeance. The audience should learn that this is a character who is unhinged going down a bad path.
No, but you gotta root. You gotta go, Yas, Queen, Yas!
That was the reality of it. And they leaned into that sentiment season after season. Season 2 and 3 both end with white savior moments where she's literally being, this pure white blonde lady is in a crowd of brown slaves and she's freed them all. She's this great savior. And that behavior basically ramps up season after season. And then in season 6, she murders all the slavery people and then gets on the boats with the dragons. And it's like, yes, she's going to take her sword and hammer of justice, teach the people of Westeros a thing or two. And then season 7 is just Daenerys war crimes. Season
White
8,
savior.
Daenerys war crimes.
Game of Thrones, white savior. No.
Right, so we already talked about all that. I'll ramp back down before I get lost in the sauce there. It's just a point in which, a rather poorly made show or a show with a rather uneducated audience like Game of Thrones is able to misunderstand the purpose of radicalization in epic fantasy storytelling versus one done by a well-made, well-written show with perhaps a more literate audience.
Just machine gun, just out here. So many people catching stray bullets. Dear God.
Correct.
I thought we said we wouldn't shoot the audience. I guess you didn't agree to that before we started shooting this episode, but
I only agreed that I would do my best to not be overly critical of Attack on Titan.
All right,
and
so
I
our next
succeeded
few
at the
episodes
end by placing it on a pedestal above a beloved show, the ever bad Game of Thrones.
Get ready for other anime episodes where Attack on Titan is then ruthlessly debased. No, I don't expect it will. I very much enjoyed this show. I have only seen it through once, but it did really activate for me all sorts of like trying to uncover the mysteries, but then also, I mean, I think it helps that I'm a high school teacher because I come in contact with like kids who are sorting through their own problems like every single day. And so I see the like Bildungsroman playing out, and I have these philosophical discussions with kids all the time about like, what does all this bullshit mean? Like, what does everything mean? Like, I have these problems, and like, what am I supposed to do about them? So I recognize the fact that we all are trying to sort through this insane world, and there's all of this bad stuff that happens, but I don't believe that it's all meaningless. I think there's still things that we can do, things that we can enjoy, and focusing on the small moments. I don't think it's a perfect show by any means. I think you did mention its derivation from the manga, or you referenced that you were going to bring that up. I don't think we did.
Right. No, I didn't. So yeah, the show ends with Mikasa killing Eren, and she buries his head under this tree he visited before. And then a bird wraps a scarf around her shoulders, and she says, "Thank you, Eren," which is meant to imply that she believes the spirit of Eren lives on in nature. The ending of the manga, which may have also been shot as an ending of the anime, and it may have been released as part of like the special episodes. It's not clear to me. The version I saw ended with the scarf thing. From what I've read, there's a more true to the adaptation, the manga, which ends with like her burying him beneath the tree, and then it shows the tree over time as Paradis around it grows and thrives in peace before succumbing to war, and then the tree being visited by a young boy and a dog, which to me is an implication that the same way that Ymir, 2,000 years in the past, went into a tree and discovered the power of the Titans from some sort of parasitic thing underground, is the same way that this young boy in this future vision of the tree would find the same thing.
Thereby basically asserting that war is cyclical, and despite us forgetting about like previous generations or previous history or iterations of conflict and killing, eventually someone will become radicalized, and this demon or this weapon or these ideas will then rear their ugly head and come to pass again.
Right, but that's also just my subjective interpretation of the manga ending, which I do think is actually better than the anime ending, at least the one I'm talking about. Mainly because it's more subjective. There's more to read into. You kind of have to decide what the ending of the seeing that tree and the future of Paradis playing out, what that's supposed to mean. as opposed to the anime ending, which is cleaner. It's kind of like this. It's like, all right, we got closure. Eren talked to Armin. The bros are all good. Armin doesn't forgive him for the genocide, but he understands. And Mikasa always loved him, even though she killed him. And then she thanks him in the scarf because she had the scarf when she was a little kid, and it's all good. Bittersweet.
Yeah. It tries to have it. It tries to make its cake and eat it too. Have its cake and eat it too, basically.
Yeah, because I think a show as morally complex as this one, and I give this show a lot of credit for being able to portray different aspects of war and morality through multiple perspectives.
Oh my God, that with all the characters, it's so complicated.
I think it's hard to stick the landing of a show like this, especially when there's fucking stupid time travel shit throughout it, because that's always hard to do. And if you ask a real hater, because there are real haters of the show out there, for as popular as it is, they will tell you all about the plot holes and the inconsistencies and how the end ruins everything. Everyone loses their mind.
Just becoming the Joker slowly over the course of the episode.
Oh, I've talked to enough haters of this show. The same way that Eren is radicalized early in the show, you'll find people who fall in love with animes like this one, and when they don't like the ending, they're the Joker. They become radicalized by it because the thing that they loved that was so pure and so virtuous didn't end the way they thought it would or wanted it to, and all it takes is one little failure to live up to expectations, and suddenly you're the fucking colossal titan nuking people.
Oops, became the thing you hated.
But yeah, I did want to just say that the being able to end it the manga ending well, being able to balance the morality and have an ending that is sort of open to interpretation, I think is an achievement. And whether or not that's actually in the anime, like I said, that's not in the version I watched, but from what I can read of summaries, I think that version exists in the anime somewhere.
Yeah, it may become spliced and more widespread in the coming years, but I think we've said all we need to say about it. Hope you guys enjoyed, and yeah, we have some big, if you've stuck with us this whole time, we have some big things coming down the pike.
Titans.
No, we're not bringing those back. All right, till next time, everyone. Adios.